slaves. The male slaves were about 600 and the female slaves were about 400. So at one time the castle held approximately 1,000 slaves at a time. The boss, that's the governor of the castle, was on top of everybody. Assistant Governor Fulus, and the rest of the rooms were for soldiers. We have the missionaries and this part for the merchants. So that's their church. This is the first Christian church the Portuguese built. It's a Catholic church in this country. That's why it is in reddish bricks. Now, when Dutch took over, they were not Catholics. Dutch were Protestants. So they divided this church into two, and they used the ground floor as their auctioning hall. Upper floor, junior soldiers mess, and they built their own church, ironically, on top of the female dungeon. So we call it Dutch Reformed Church or Protestant Church. Two churches here. Now, this wall, the slanted wall here, we have a similar one at the other side. Dutch added them to support the walls of the castle when they took over from the Portuguese. And the iron rails on top of it, the metal, added by the British later, they used the castle as a police training school in 1948. Policemen were climbing up and down for training or exercise. Now let's compare the two cells. Go inside. Now, this was a cell for the European soldiers. So some of the European soldiers went out without permission. Others were also drunk. So they were in this one as punishment, and later they will be released. That's why this cell is well ventilated. Okay. Now let's see the other one.
Since that one was a young soldier,
And they were packed.
Yes.
Oh, you want to pack up?
Yeah. Yeah. This was the cell for the slaves, those who tried to escape and those who were fighting the masters. Today we may call them the freedom fighters. They were in this one, no food, no water until you die. So this was a dead or condemned cell for the Africans. That's why in front of it there's a crossbone and a star.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How many people they'll put in that cell at one time?
It isn't on record. I think it depends on those who...
How many people act up and they just throw you in there until you die? And then when you die, they just throw your
carry
body?
the body and then they throw it into the sea. Now look, this is Dutch, and it's old Dutch. When Dutch were here, one of their governors died. They wrote this one to remember the governor. The governor is from Zeeland. It's one of the provinces in the Netherlands. And he was the last Director General of West Indies Company, Dutch West Indies. The governor arrived here on the 16th of January, 1758, and he died 12 March that same year when he was 41 years old. And there's a tribute written by a priest. It's a tribute to the governor. The name of the priest is A. Andresi, and the priest is from Veer And then Viera is also a village in Zealand. What the priest is saying is that when this governor was alive, he was very humble, he was honest, and God-fearing. That's what the priest is saying.
How much God-fearing all you should keep enslaved?
Is that?
That's how much God-fearing all you should keep enslaved.
Yeah, so the governor lived up there. He was on top of everybody. The middle one for the assistant governor, and the rest for soldiers, missionaries, and merchants. Yeah, so the female slaves were at this side, so this is the female courtyard. And according to the history, 400 of them were here, and the 600 men were also there. So approximately the castle held 1,000 slaves. And there's a cannonball they used to punish the female slaves. There were a lot of balls here with chains connected, 8 balls with chains connected. So for the, the women who refused to be raped, because when the Europeans came, only the men came here without their wives. Some of them were harassing the female slaves sexually. So those who resisted rape, those who tried to escape, and those who were fighting the masters to be released were brought here. So for the women, punishment came in the form of public humiliation. You'll be chained to the ball, and the person stands here, whether there is rain or sunshine. And they did that just to break the spirit of the rest down, or to serve as a deterrent to the rest of them in the time. So there was a program here. It was held on 3rd July 2015. And the title for the program is The Return of the Slaves. The Return of the Slaves. So many people came here, some from the States, some from UK, Nigeria, Canada, Ivory Coast. Ghanaians were part. They slept in this dungeon for one night, just to have a feel of how the slaves felt when they were in the dungeon. So this is what they used to cover themselves. So they were here for a reenactment of the slave trade. And I've already told you that in this castle there are 2 churches. The one I showed you was a church for the Portuguese, the Catholic Church. When Dutch took over, they were not Catholics, they were Protestants. So they built their own church, ironically, on top of this dungeon. So they were worshiping God. Human beings were down, also crying for her.
Yeah,
so 2 churches. God. Now, this is water reservoir. They connected pipes on top of the building, so whenever it rains, it passes through. The water was filtered there, and clean water will be harvested here. And this covers the entire floor. We are standing on it. And when it is full, we have 20,000 gallons of water. So domestic use only. Now, according to the history, anytime the governor of the castle wants to rape one of the women, this is where he stands. This is a balcony. And some of the women will be assembled as we are, and he chooses the one he likes. So you have to fetch water for the one chosen to wash down. Maybe the person might have been in the dungeon for so long without taking a bath. And after the humiliation, the woman will be forced to climb the stairs that you see. Let's have a look. And this one, there's a trap door on the top and up straight to the governor's bedroom. And after the rape, the woman comes back as a slave. Not only the governor, some of the soldiers and others were also doing the same. So they said a lot of the women got pregnant. And then they built houses outside the castle for them to stay. They brought the children because the children were light-skinned. So the children were brought back to the castle. They were no slaves, and those children were educated. And that is why even today in Ghana, it is common to hear names like Vanderbilt. We have Van Dyke, Fiala, we have Smith, Vroom, Duncan, McCarthy, Johnson, Lansing, Dixon, and all the senses. all are as a result of the coming of these Europeans. Let's continue.
This is wrong. This is so wrong.
Now, among the dungeons for the female slaves, this is the largest one. And because this one is the largest, they said 150 women were here. 150 female slaves. There was a door at the side close. Another door over there. Ventilation was from this one, and the one you see at the end. And this is the original floor. They were all sleeping on the bed floor. No toilet facilities for them, because initially they were using the rooms on the ground floor as storerooms. Now, when they shifted to slavery, the same rooms were converted into dungeons. There were no toilet facilities for them. They said they put containers in the dungeons for the slaves to ease themselves. So you can imagine those who fell sick and were very weak, and those who could not get closer to the containers have to do it themselves. And then there were women, they had their menses still in the same condition. And then they stayed here for 3 months to wait for the ships. Because there were no machines, so the ship that came, or any ship that came, used the power of the wind to display. That is why a lot of them died. And those who died were thrown into the sea. Any question?
I have a question. When the woman gives birth to their children, they take the children, that's it. They just take them from birth, from the mother.
Yeah. At a certain stage, they brought the children back and the children were educated. But at that time, there were domestic slaves and commercial slaves. So some of the women were domestics. The domestic slaves were left. They were the weaker ones. They were not transported. So they were doing the sweeping and other things. But the commercial ones were the stronger ones who were transported. So I believe that some of them after were also transported.
Okay, so the children don't know their mother.
Children, they didn't know.